In a bold and controversial move, President Donald Trump has initiated significant changes that could reshape the federal workforce and disrupt vital government funding. As part of a broader effort to streamline and reform the U.S. government, the administration is offering buyout packages to nearly all federal employees while simultaneously attempting to pause federal grants and loans pending an ideological review of government programs. These actions have sparked widespread confusion and concern among lawmakers, advocacy groups, and the general public. On January 28, 2025, the Trump administration sent an email to federal workers detailing a deferred resignation program that would offer up to 8 months of severance pay to those who agree to resign by September. Officials anticipate that around 200,000 federal employees, roughly 10% of the workforce, may accept the offer. Senior officials claim that this initiative could save the government up to $100 billion. The Office of Personnel Management emphasized that this program is part of a broader set of reforms, including a mandate for most federal employees to return to in-office work 5 days a week, effectively reversing remote work practices established during the pandemic. However, this move has not gone without criticism. The head of the American Federation of Government Employees warned that such a purging process could lead to chaos, particularly for those who rely on the services provided by the federal government. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine raised concerns about the legality of Trump's buyout offer, suggesting that the president lacks the authority to make such unilateral decisions regarding federal employment. Compounding the controversy, Trump also announced a freeze on federal grants and loans. A decision that was supposed to take effect immediately but was temporarily blocked by a federal judge just minutes before implementation. U.S. District Judge Loren L. Lalikhan ruled that the freeze would remain on hold until a court hearing scheduled for the following week, citing potential constitutional issues and the chaotic implications of the funding pause for states and organizations dependent on federal support. The funding freeze has raised alarms across multiple sectors, particularly in education, healthcare, and social services, with advocates warning that such a pause could jeopardize essential programs. Nonprofit organizations that rely on federal funds filed a lawsuit against the administration, arguing that the freeze would disproportionately harm vulnerable communities. The White House has attempted to clarify that programs offering direct assistance such as Medicare and Social Security would not be affected. But confusion remains over which specific programs might face cuts. The implications of these sweeping changes could be far-reaching. Programs like Meals on Wheels, which depend on federal funding to deliver meals to the elderly, expressed concern over potential disruptions. Additionally, the National Science Foundation postponed grant review panels, further signaling the freeze's impact on scientific research and funding initiatives. Trump's administration is clearly leveraging its control over federal resources to promote a conservative agenda, including increased fossil fuel production and the rollback of diversity and inclusion initiatives. The Office of Management and Budget has issued directives that require federal agencies to assess their programs against the president's recent executive orders aiming to eliminate what they deem as Marxist equity initiatives. As the situation unfolds, the potential for future legal challenges looms large. Attorneys general from 22 states and the District of Columbia have already filed their own lawsuit against the administration, seeking to block the funding freeze permanently. With the Trump administration's aggressive approach to reshaping the federal landscape, observers are left to ponder the long-term consequences for government operations and the communities that rely on its support. In conclusion, Trump's latest initiatives reflect a decisive shift in federal policy that prioritizes ideological alignment and budgetary cuts over the established norms of governance. As the administration moves forward, it faces mounting legal and political challenges that will undoubtedly shape the narrative of its second term. The coming weeks are poised to be critical in determining not only the fate of federal funding and employment, but also the extent to which Trump's vision for government reform will be realized amid increasing opposition. In a dramatic turn of events, a federal judge has intervened to block President Donald Trump's controversial plan to freeze federal grants and loans, a move that has sent shockwaves through various sectors dependent on government funding. The ruling, delivered on January 28, 2025 comes just minutes before the funding freeze was set to take effect, highlighting the chaotic nature of the Trump administration's latest initiative to reshape federal spending in line with conservative ideologies. The freeze was part of an expansive review aimed at identifying and dismantling what the Trump administration perceives as progressive programs that do not align with its policy priorities. Critics quickly raised alarms, warning that such a pause could jeopardize essential services ranging from education and healthcare to childcare in communities across the nation. This sort of came out of the blue, remarked David Smith, spokesperson for the Shawnee Mission School District in Kansas, emphasizing the confusion that has gripped districts reliant on federal funding. U.S. District Judge Loren L. Alikhan, appointed by President Joe Biden, issued an administrative stay that halts the implementation of the freeze until at least the following Monday. Her order was prompted by a lawsuit filed by nonprofit organizations that rely on federal funding, which argued that the freeze would have dire consequences for vulnerable populations. It seems like the federal government currently doesn't actually know the full extent of the programs that are going to be subject to the pause, she noted, underscoring the lack of clarity surrounding the administration's intentions. The legal and political ramifications of this decision are significant. Democrats facing a challenging political landscape during Trump's second term seized upon the ruling as evidence of the administration's overreach. New York Attorney General Letitia James condemned the freeze as reckless, dangerous, illegal, and unconstitutional, while Democratic attorneys general from 22 states and the District of Columbia simultaneously filed their own lawsuit aimed at permanently blocking the funding cuts. The chaos surrounding the freeze was exacerbated by vague communications from the White House, leaving many public officials and organizations scrambling to ascertain which programs would be affected. Initial statements from the administration suggested that programs providing direct assistance such as Medicare and Social Security would remain intact. However, the distinction between these and other programs like Medicaid initially remained unclear, causing further anxiety among state officials and service providers. As the judge's ruling temporarily alleviated some immediate concerns, the broader implications of Trump's directive to pause funding remain under scrutiny. The administration's review involves a meticulous audit of federal initiatives, with agencies instructed to evaluate whether programs align with Trump's executive orders, which aim to bolster fossil fuel production and dismantle diversity initiatives. This sweeping review of federal funding threatens to disrupt services that millions of Americans depend upon, including community health programs and educational services. Organizations like Meals on Wheels, which provide critical support to the elderly, expressed deep concerns about the potential fallout from the freeze. The lack of clarity and uncertainty right now is creating chaos, said spokesperson Jenny Young, highlighting the anxiety felt by those who may suddenly find themselves without essential services. In the face of mounting criticism, White House officials have argued that the funding freeze is part of a necessary effort to ensure taxpayer dollars are spent in accordance with the administration's priorities. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that the president is committed to aligning federal spending with the will of the American people, dismissing accusations that he is maneuvering to usurp congressional authority over budgetary matters. As the situation develops, the court's ruling serves as a temporary reprieve for those concerned about the implications of a funding freeze. However, the chaos triggered by this initiative underscores the delicate balance between executive power and legislative oversight in federal budgeting. With a court hearing scheduled for next week, stakeholders will be watching closely to see how the administration navigates this contentious landscape and whether the freeze will ultimately be reinstated. The outcome could have lasting effects on federal funding and the services that countless Americans rely on, spotlighting the ongoing tensions in U.S. governance as the Trump administration seeks to assert its agenda in the face of legal and political challenges. In a bold and controversial move reminiscent of the turbulent early days of his first presidency, Donald Trump has initiated sweeping changes within the federal government that are causing immediate and widespread repercussions. Just days into his second term, Trump has attempted to pause up to $3 trillion in federal grants and loans, sparking a chaotic response from numerous sectors dependent on these funds. This maneuver aimed at reshaping the federal landscape to align with his conservative priorities has faced significant pushback, culminating in a federal judge's temporary block on the freeze. The ramifications of Trump's freeze are profound, threatening critical funding for education, healthcare, and various social services that millions of Americans rely on. Advocates have decried the freeze as not only reckless but also as a move to politicize essential services that should remain nonpartisan. A federal judge, Loren L. Alicon, intervened just minutes before the freeze was to take effect, issuing a stay that will remain in place until further hearings can clarify the legality of Trump's actions. Alicon highlighted the confusion surrounding which specific programs would be affected, stating, "It seems like the federal government currently doesn't actually know the full extent of the programs that are going to be subject to the pause." Trump's administration has justified this funding freeze as necessary to ensure compliance with his recent executive orders aimed at diminishing what he describes as progressive ideologies permeating federal programs. This includes a focus on reducing funding for initiatives seen as promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as increased fossil fuel production. Critics, however, argue that halting these funds without clear justification undermines the integrity of programs that serve vulnerable populations, including children, seniors, and those reliant on public health services. Democrats have reacted swiftly, launching legal challenges and voicing their concerns over the potential chaos the freeze could unleash. New York Attorney General Letitia James described the policy as reckless, dangerous, illegal, and unconstitutional, emphasizing the urgency with which communities are responding to the uncertainty of their funding. State officials from across the country have reported receiving panicked calls from constituents worried about the fate of local programs vital to public health and safety. The potential fallout from this funding freeze extends beyond immediate fiscal impacts to a broader ideological battle shaping the future of governance in the U.S. Trump's administration, emboldened by a conservative judicial landscape, is poised to challenge long-standing norms governing federal funding. With the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 as a backdrop, which restricts a president's ability to unilaterally halt funding appropriated by Congress, Trump's actions are seen as a direct challenge to the legislative branch's authority over fiscal matters. As Trump continues to reshape the federal bureaucracy, he has also sought to consolidate power within the executive branch by purging officials deemed disloyal and promoting a culture of reporting among federal employees regarding compliance with his directives. This top-down approach has raised alarms about the erosion of the civil service's independence, traditionally shielded from partisan politics. Paul Light, a public service expert, warned, "You can't just hassle. You've got to deliver," underscoring the potential risks of a governance style that prioritizes ideological conformity over effective public service. As the legal battles unfold and the implications of Trump's funding freeze become clearer, the Biden administration and Democratic leaders remain on high alert, ready to mobilize resources to counteract what they perceive as an existential threat to the social safety net. The ongoing struggle over federal funding is likely to intensify, setting the stage for a contentious political landscape that may define the upcoming years. How these developments will ultimately reshape the relationship between federal agencies and the communities they serve remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the stakes have never been higher. In a striking return to the political landscape, former President Donald Trump has taken decisive steps that could reshape the United States economic framework. Following his inauguration, Trump made headlines with a series of executive orders and policy shifts, including a controversial pause on federal grants and a pointed focus on trade tariffs that could ripple through various sectors of the economy. As Trump reasserts his influence, the implications of his actions extend beyond immediate fiscal measures, hinting at a broader shift towards a more centralized economic approach that some are describing as command capitalism. On January 29, 2025, Trump ordered a temporary halt to all federal grants, loans, and financial assistance programs, a move designed to align spending with his administration's priorities. According to a memo from the Office of Management and Budget (OMB), this moratorium could affect a wide array of assistance programs, particularly those relating to foreign aid and initiatives that the administration deems aligned with woke ideologies. While essential programs like Medicare and Social Security are expected to remain unaffected, the pause could impact funding for state and local governments, disaster relief, and small business loans. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer condemned the move, warning it could lead to chaos across vital services. The legal implications of Trump's order are also significant. Historically, the U.S. Constitution grants Congress the power to fund programs, raising questions about the legality of the president's ability to impose such a freeze. The Impoundment Control Act of 1974 mandates that the executive branch must spend the funds that Congress has approved, underscoring the potential for a legal challenge to Trump's decision. As the situation unfolds, agencies have until February 10 to submit detailed reports on the programs affected by the freeze, and a federal judge has granted a temporary stay on the spending freeze, leaving the future of these initiatives in limbo. In conjunction with the spending pause, Trump has signaled an aggressive stance on trade, proposing tariffs on critical imports such as steel, aluminum, and semiconductors. These tariffs, which could reach as high as 100% on certain goods, are intended to bolster U.S. manufacturing by discouraging reliance on foreign products. The Taiwanese government has expressed concerns, noting the interdependence of U.S. and Taiwanese semiconductor industries, particularly as companies like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company (TSMC) invest heavily in U.S. operations. Trump's approach heralds a shift from traditional Republican economic policies that typically favor market-driven solutions. Analysts suggest that his inclination to pick winners and losers in the economy could mark a departure from laissez-faire principles, leading to a more hands-on, centralized economic governance model. This shift raises important questions about the long-term effects on innovation and competition, as companies may increasingly rely on government favor rather than market performance for success. The potential rise of command capitalism under Trump's administration could also echo historical precedents with mixed outcomes. While countries like China have achieved substantial economic growth through similar strategies, the risk of crony capitalism looms large, where success becomes contingent upon maintaining favorable relationships with those in power. This could lead to stagnation and a decrease in overall economic dynamism as businesses prioritize government connections over product quality and innovation. Moreover, Trump's initial actions signal a broader agenda that could redefine relationships between government and industry. His executive orders directing agencies to lower prices and expand domestic energy production reflect a commitment to reshaping the economic landscape, albeit with potential pitfalls. The consequences of these policies will likely unfold over the coming months as businesses and consumers navigate the new terrain of economic governance. As the Trump administration embarks on this ambitious agenda, observers are left to ponder the implications for American capitalism. Will this approach foster a more robust economy, or will it stifle competition and innovation? As Trump continues to assert his vision for the U.S. economy, the nation stands at a crossroads with the potential for significant change on the horizon. How this plays out will be critical not only for the future of economic policy but also for the fundamental principles of governance in the United States. In a significant shift in leadership dynamics within the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced that he is immediately pulling retired General Mark Milley's personal security detail and security clearance. This decision comes amid ongoing scrutiny of Milley's actions during his tenure as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, particularly regarding allegations that he undermined the chain of command during the administration of former President Donald Trump. Milley has been under fire for his controversial statements and actions, particularly those captured in Bob Woodward's book War. In it, Milley reportedly described Trump as fascist to the core and expressed concerns about Trump's mental stability and control over nuclear weapons. As a result of these revelations, the new administration appears to be positioning itself to hold Milley accountable for his past conduct. A review board has been established to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to strip Milley of a star in retirement, a move that would symbolize a significant demotion. The decision to revoke Milley's security detail is particularly noteworthy given that he had been under protective measures since Iran vowed retaliation for the U.S. drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani in 2020. The Pentagon's abrupt removal of Milley's security arrangements signals a new era of accountability under Hegseth's leadership, which some officials claim aligns with the expectations of the American public. A senior administration official who chose to remain anonymous highlighted this sentiment. There is a new era of accountability in the Defense Department under President Trump's leadership, and that's exactly what the American people expect. As part of this reorganization, the Pentagon will also remove a portrait of Milley from the Army's Marshall Corridor following the earlier removal of another portrait when Trump was inaugurated. This action underscores a broader shift away from honoring Milley's legacy within military circles, which has been a point of contention given his prior service as both Army Chief of Staff and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The political implications of these developments are profound. Milley's tenure was marked by pivotal moments, including his involvement in high-stakes military decisions during both the Trump and Biden administrations. Critics of the administration, including former officials like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, who also had personal security details, are now expressing concern about their own safety and security as these protective measures are revoked. Moreover, Milley's contentious relationship with Trump has led to a polarized public perception. While some defend his actions as necessary for national security, others view them as insubordination. As the Biden administration grapples with the fallout from Trump's presidency, this latest move could set a precedent for how military leaders are treated post-retirement, particularly those who publicly opposed or criticized their commanders-in-chief. Looking ahead, the ongoing review of Milley's conduct could have significant ramifications for military accountability and governance, particularly as the nation navigates an increasingly divided political landscape. As the Pentagon continues to reshape its leadership and policies, all eyes will be on how these changes impact military operations and the overall integrity of the armed forces in a time of heightened scrutiny and expectation from the public. As Donald Trump begins his second term as President of the United States, the political landscape is once again shifting dramatically, with implications rippling across global diplomacy, particularly in the realm of nuclear tensions and international partnerships. The recent inspection of a nuclear facility by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un serves as a stark reminder of the challenges that the Trump administration will face. On January 28, state media reported that Kim emphasized the need to bolster North Korea's nuclear capabilities, coinciding with Trump's renewed willingness to engage in diplomatic discussions. This juxtaposition highlights the complexities of Trump's foreign policy approach, which many describe as focused on the near abroad. Critics argue that Trump's prioritization of issues such as immigration and drug trafficking, often framed as a modern iteration of the Monroe Doctrine, risks neglecting broader global dynamics. In a pointed commentary, former Deputy National Security Advisor Matt Pottinger cautioned that the U.S. must maintain its influence in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, as these regions directly impact the livelihoods of Americans. The truth is that the U.S. must retain the capability and resolve to influence events in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, because they affect the livelihoods of ordinary Americans, Pottinger wrote, urging Trump to avoid the pitfalls of a narrow foreign policy focus. In parallel, the emergence of China's AI capabilities, exemplified by the launch of DeepSeek, has spurred concerns about American technological leadership. This moment, likened to the Soviet Union's Sputnik launch, triggers reflections on national pride and defense, with experts asserting that the stakes in the AI race could be even higher than those in the space race of the 1960s. As AI becomes integral to virtually every aspect of technology, the U.S. faces critical questions about its competitive edge in this transformative field. Meanwhile, domestic policies are also shifting under Trump's administration. His recent executive orders, including a controversial ban on transgender individuals serving in the military and a halt on federal funding for gender-related healthcare for minors, underscore a return to policies that some supporters view as a restoration of traditional values. Trump's administration is emphasizing a clear delineation of gender in military service, drawing sharp responses from various advocacy groups. On the international front, the potential for renewed dialogue with North Korea remains tenuous. While Trump has expressed a willingness to re-engage, Kim analysts suggest that North Korea's recent military provocations, including a series of missile tests, are aimed at strengthening its bargaining position. Kim's assertion that enhancing the nuclear arsenal is our invariable noble task reflects a steadfast commitment to military advancements, complicating the prospect of fruitful negotiations. In contrast, Iran has cautiously opened the door for diplomacy, with Trump signaling a possible softening of its previously hardline stance. This development could indicate an opportunity for more constructive engagement as the U.S. seeks to navigate the complexities of Middle Eastern geopolitics. Against this backdrop, the U.S.-India partnership is poised for a new chapter under Trump's leadership. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue Quad, aimed at counterbalancing China's regional influence, is likely to gain prominence. This partnership could facilitate enhanced military cooperation and greater participation in regional decision-making, aligning with India's strategic interests. As Trump's administration unfolds, the interplay between domestic policies, international diplomacy, and technological advancements will be critical to shaping the future of U.S. foreign relations. The stakes are high, and as the administration navigates these multifaceted challenges, the world will be watching closely to see whether Trump's vision of America First can translate into effective global leadership.